All right, how was lunch? Woo! Yay for lunch. Food coma? No? All right. Well, our next topic is going to be a fun one, so it should keep everybody awake. Our next speaker is Matt Thielen. He's a pen tester on the offensive security side at Enterprise. He spent 12 years in IT, 9 of them in security. He had an IT consulting business where he worked on everything from busted computers to disaster recovery planning. And before being in IT, he was in the U.S. Army Infantry for 6 years. So, please welcome Matt Thielen.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Again, thanks for coming to my talk. My name is Matt Thielen. Today I want to talk to you about how to gain momentum on your security awareness program. So earlier this year, Enterprise Holdings, with the help of Parameter Security, put together a Capture the Flag event for folks who were in IT but who were not in the security field. So what I want to talk to you today about is how we put together a Capture the Flag event to celebrate the opening of a new campus and how that helped get security awareness on the radar and help promote that, as well as networking throughout the IT organization. It's important to note that we had top-down support for this. Without that support, this would not have been possible. So what I want to talk to you today about is the goals that we had set for this Capture the Flag event. I want to talk about the challenges that we faced while we put this together. I want to cover the 2-day Capture the Flag exercise, as well as the conclusion of the event, so some of the stuff that we did immediately following that exercise. I want to talk about the response that we got from participants, and then talk about the numbers as far as how many people came together to make this CTF happen, as well as some of the people who participated in the web challenge, which I'll go in detail on here in a bit. And then I want to finish that up with the immediate impact to organization. So if you're looking to sell this to your organization or to your management, this last slide is could be pretty important. So again, this is some of the stuff that we saw taking or that we're able to take away from the event immediately at the conclusion. So the main goal, celebrating the opening of a new campus. So this was a main driver. We had a new campus opening in Maryland Heights off of Lakeside. And during a brainstorming session to come up with a name, my manager at the time threw out the name Release the Kraken. So if you've seen Clash of the Titans, then you would know what Release the Kraken is. And the name started out as a joke, but it actually stuck. And so people embraced it, so much that we came up with the logo. We even came up with a slogan. It was, new building, new year, start hacking, release the Kraken. And that proved to be pretty important to the overall success of this event. Everything kind of went around the theme of that. Security awareness, this is another goal. So we wanted to bring to light some of the methods that hackers use to exploit systems. And again, these are people in IT, but who aren't in the security department. Security is everyone's job. But again, we wanted to really highlight some of these methods that hackers use. And then something fun for IT employees. Again, we knew that if this was going to be successful and something that would get a lot of talk around the organization, it was important that it would be fun. And so this was obviously a pretty big goal. And then the last, exposure for the security organization. We wanted to reinforce the services that we have to offer, and this was a great platform to do that. We were able to do this multiple times throughout the planning as well as the post-event of this Capture the Flag. So this is a picture of our new campus out there at Lakeside, Maryland Heights. Again, there's the water out there. So again, this is kind of what really threw out there the Release the Kraken and the theme. It was spelled with a C instead of a K for, crackers and hackers. And so let's go and discuss some of the challenges we faced putting this together. Timeline was a big one. The meeting, marketing and communication, it's a security awareness exercise. So how do you get people excited for something like this? The participant selection. And then last, measuring success. Now I want to go into each of these a little more in detail for you. So the timeline. We had a new vice president come into the organization, and he threw out the idea, let's do a Capture the Flag event to celebrate the opening of this new campus. Well, when he threw that idea out to when the new building was opening was about 3 months. Well, in that 3 months, training materials had to be created. We had to get people who didn't really know a lot about hacking, or at least a majority of the people we were targeting wouldn't know about hacking. So we had to get them up to speed on some of these tools and methodologies. Build a scoring and game server. Now there's a lot of different options there. There's CTFD, there's Root the Box. Even Facebook has one. But again, that's something that we would have to go build, that we would have to stand up and then make sure it was solid. Then provide hardware for the participants. Early on, we decided that we were going to provide the laptops. We threw around the idea of bringing your own device and then live booting a Kali image. In a past event, though, we did have some hurdles, and so we thought, if possible, we're going to do what we can to provide the hardware. And then last, we had to select the 30 participants. We had 30 seats for this event. We have thousands of people in IT. And so here's how we actually tackled these challenges. So we brought in a third party. We were notified, we reached out to them early on, and we're told that they have a 4-day hands-on hacking class that they were able to get down to 2 days for us. And so that took a lot off our plate right there. We brought in the same third party for the game server. So they hosted the ShowMeCon Capture the Flag event in the past. And so we knew that the solution they had would be solid, that it's been tested. And so that was just one more thing off of our plate. There was still plenty of things for us to do. And as far as the hardware, luckily we have an outstanding asset management team. Again, we reached out to them early on. And on a tight deadline, they were able to give us the hardware and a little extra to meet our needs. So they did an outstanding job. And then, of course, for selecting the participants, we needed a challenge of some sort. So as far as marketing and communication, again, we have, a lot of people, we want to get this message out. So we thought, what? Quick response code, right? We could post these up all over the campus. People will go around, they'll scan them, they'll get all excited, hey, this is a security awareness event. Well, that's not really the case. Nobody scans quick response codes. And so what we decided to do is create a poster with a very simple URL and put this poster all over all of our campuses. Now, as you can see, this poster doesn't give a lot of information. It's got the picture of what looks like our Maryland Heights campus. That's the Kraken creature back there. It's got our slogan on there. And then it says that the Information Security Office invites you to check out this URL. This URL points to the web challenge, which again, I'll go in more detail here in a bit. It states that there's no hacking or programming experience required. We didn't want people to get discouraged early on and not even try the challenge. So we posted these up all over the place, hoping that would entice people. It would get people curious, as to, what is this whole release of Kraken thing? And then a couple days later, we sent out an email. The email is very similar to the poster. Very little information is given. Now, the main reason the email went out is we do have some full-time remote employees. And so we wanted to make sure that they all had the opportunity to go and take on this challenge as well. And so for participant selection, thousands of IT people, we have a limit of 30. How do we choose a web challenge? Now, the key thing here is we wanted to make sure that the people we were bringing in had, the desire, the motivation, the aptitude to not only sit for 2 days, but would actually take something back from this. So somebody that would embrace what we're going to teach them, take that back to their teams, and do like a knowledge transfer. And that way, the initial exposure is 30 people that we're setting, but that would go far and beyond that throughout the departments. So the challenge spawned from the idea that offensive security has you go through some challenges to even register for some of their more advanced classes. And so that's kind of where this whole idea spawned from. So I want to discuss the web challenge a bit. A couple things to keep in mind. It was designed for employees that were not in security, but who are in IT. And as they progressed through the challenge, the thinking was, we'll provide education. So things such as hacker methodology, the types of hackers and hackers versus pen testers. And then also include additional information on the event. So, when is this release of Kraken? What is it all about? What's going to happen there? And the other part too, when we built this challenge, one of the parts that made it difficult is we wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to encourage people to download actual hacking tools. So they had to be able to do this with a standard build and a web browser. So a lot of the stuff in the challenge is all emulated. So, for instance, the SQL injection, there's no SQL back in there. It's all emulated through PHP. And I could show you kind of how we worked through that. So if you're looking to do this on a budget, the Raspberry Pi worked well. We actually hosted our challenge on this Pi, and when the posters went up, we had quite a bit of activity. But when that email went out, it skyrocketed. And luckily, it was only serving up some very basic HTML and PHP. So it was able to handle the load quite well. But that's what we used. And again, we had no issues with it. We did have one on standby in the event something happened, but it worked well. And it was available internally only. So somebody sees the poster, they look at that email, and they're curious. What is this release of Kraken? So they go to this page. It's kind of hard to see, but at the top, there's a huge long string there. That's a big string of binary. Just to the left of that underneath talks about what browser works best for this. I'm not that great at PHP, but I found that Chrome works best for the way this challenge was designed. So we threw that out. And there's also a hint in the lower left-hand corner saying, convert the ASCII to binary, and then make sure that the binary doesn't get truncated. So essentially, someone visits this, they convert that binary, and it says something to the effect of, be one of 30 participants to take part in a 2-day Capture the Flag style event at our new Lakeside campus in January. If you're interested, complete the challenge to be considered as one of the participants. And so then we threw out there again, there's no hacking or programming experience required. What's interesting, though, is we posted a blog on our intranet. And the main purpose of that was so people could share their experiences with the challenge, what they thought about it. And when this challenge went live to when the first comment was posted was not very long at all. We had 40-plus positive comments on there. But the very first comment was somebody saying, I saw the poster, I went to the website where it said I would get more information, and it doesn't give any more information. So right there, I'm like, wow, this is working. Because that's one person we don't want sitting here, right? They looked at this for a whole 2 seconds and couldn't, they didn't read the hint. And so they convert the binary. It tells them that message about, participating for the event, and it gives them a path to the next part of the web challenge. Now here we took the opportunity to outline the participant criteria. We knew this was important. What we couldn't settle on is, at first, do we want it at the very end of the challenge so people weren't discouraged, or do we put it at the very beginning so people kind of know what's expected of them? So the criteria calls out things such as demonstrates an interest in security, the ability to influence others, and that's what we were looking for. And so, again, we settled on putting this in early in the challenge. That way, people kind of had a heads up. Whether they met the criteria or not, there's a hyperlink they could click on to proceed through the challenge. So I didn't want to include a screenshot of every part of the challenge, but I did want to hit on the flow of it. So they click on the hyperlink, and we take them to a page where we decide, let's talk hacking stuff. So we outline the 5 steps to hacker methodology, as well as the different types of hackers and hacker versus pen testers. Then we talk about the importance of enumeration and how, in a lot of cases, a pen test engagement can take up to, or 80% of a pen test engagement is information gathering and enumeration. And, when you think you've enumerated enough, you enumerate more. And so then we talk about explore the robots.tit file. Now, we don't tell them what that file is. Again, we're leaving it up to the participant to go out there and do the necessary research. If you don't know what that file is, it sits at the top level of the web directory, and you put parts of your website in there that you don't want an obeying web crawler to go out and index. The key is obeying, right? And so this makes it a good spot for pen testers and hackers to go look. So the participant goes, they look at this robots.txt file. There's like 5 or 6 entries in there, but only one of them allows them to get to the next part of the event. And which is phase 2. So they put phase 2 in the path, and then it takes them to event information. So here we decide, let's get them pumped up again. So they already know that it's a CTF event at our new building. Here we throw out the exact date in January that it's taking place. We talk about there's going to be food and music and drinks, and get excited because this is going to be a lot of fun. And then we immediately talk about encryption versus encoding and the importance of both. So again, it was a great opportunity for us just to continue educating them on things they may not be aware of. And just below that is a base 64 encoded string. And that's it. And so again, we leave it up to them to go do the research and take that base 64 encoded string, convert it to ASCII, which gives them a path to the next part of the challenge. Here we take the opportunity to reinforce some of the services that the security organization has to offer. We have, a staff of pen testers, full-time pen testers within the security organization. We're here for you guys, and here's our contact information. And then we follow that up with comments on a website. And so the goal here is to get the participant to look at the source code of the page. And in the source code is a hidden directory that points to a parameter manipulation exercise. Now this is a very simple GET request. So when they get to this part of the challenge, the URL populates with user equals non-admin. And there's a proceed button below it. Now if they hit that proceed button without manipulating that URL, it simply says, no admin access. Well, it doesn't take long to realize, what if I remove the non from the user part in the URL, right? So they modify that, it says user equals admin. It sends them out to the last page of our web challenge. Here they would enter in their work email address, get the hash, and then email it to us, at which point they're added to a spreadsheet to be considered for the capture the flag event. Now, when we set this up, one of our concerns was, what if we don't get 30 people to come and do this challenge? How are we going to fill these seats? The flip side is, what if we get a lot of people to do this? So we decided to go ahead and create a more difficult challenge. So above that graphic, it says, a more difficult challenge exists. Can you find and solve it? We don't give them any information as to where this starts. We leave that up to them. So hopefully, everything they learned up to this point, they remember. So if they check the source code on this main page, it's a hex encoded value that says, look at all previous comments and websites. Well, if they do that on the first page, there is a comment, that says, there's a link for an image. It's a stego decoder. And on top of that, the image on the main page is called image steg.jpg. So raising all kinds of flags that, guess what, there's steganography here. And so they put the image to a steganography decoder, and it takes them to an advanced parameter tampering exercise. Again, this is very similar to the first one. The only difference is there are two parameters. There's a user and an ID. We did run into issues with this. So by default, it populates with user equals administrator and ID equals 5. We had some people that were going through, kind of hitting this, and then they, I guess, maybe started overthinking it, and so they scripted it, which is awesome, except for this is on a Pi with a 32 gig card. And so I'm looking at the access log, and I'm like, oh shit, it was filling up, really quick. And so my concern was, if this thing drops, even for a couple minutes, we're going to lose a lot of people. They're not going to come back and visit this. They're going to be like, whatever, screw this. And so, I quickly put it in an IP tables rule, blocked that user, reached out to them, and just let them know, think of privileged accounts and associated IDs. Well, the one that would allow them to proceed was user is admin and ID is 1. When they did that, it took them to a SQL injection challenge. Again, it's important to note, there was no SQL backend on here. The main reason is because of time. We didn't have a way to develop a challenge that would have, or a database that would be vulnerable to injection, and then for the most part guarantee somebody couldn't get code execution and take over our web server and possibly deface it and embarrass us. So what we did is we emulated everything in PHP. So thinking of our audience, again, these are people who aren't out there hacking all the time. They may know some basics on SQL, but most people are going to go out to a site like OWASP and look for some common SQL injection strings. So what we did is we built the PHP to accept like 15 or 20 of the top SQL injection strings. Now on this page was just one input box for username, and there was a submit button. If they put anything in there that wasn't acceptable, it would throw up a generic MySQL message. If they put in an acceptable one, what would happen is it would take them to another page that replicated it like dumping administrative credentials. So therefore bypassing authentication. And so we tried to make it look as real as possible. When they did that, it just took them to a page that had a cipher. We didn't call out what kind of cipher it was. Early on, we were using an Affine cipher, and we threw a hint out there, but quickly realized that was going to be a little too difficult. One of the key parts of designing this was making sure that people weren't spending a lot of their day doing this. We had to make sure that people could learn something and get through it in a reasonable amount of time. So we just went with the ROT14 cipher. Now, when we were creating this challenge, we had some people from the security organization going through and testing it. And as they were doing this, because we wanted to make sure it flowed right, look for errors, spelling, and but I was monitoring the access log, and I kept seeing people hit certain parts of the site that didn't exist, like phpinfo.php. Well, if you know what that is, it's a file that discloses a whole lot of information on your setup. So I took the opportunity. I'm like, well, you know what? That's a good learning opportunity. So I created that page, but here it's only just HTML. But it talks about a good pen tester, a good hacker has to string together multiple low-risk items in order to create a high-risk item. Having that phpinfo.php page exposed gives you a lot of information, so it's a good thing not to have there. In the lower left-hand corner is the index of CSS. Now, people were hitting that outside of just going to the main page, so we took that opportunity to create a passwords.txt file. And in that file was nothing but hunter2, which is that middle box there on the right. How many people know what hunter2 means? That's it? Oh, man. So, it's a funny story. So back in 2004, an IRC user was conned into giving up his password. Something to the effect of, one IRC user said, hey, when you put your password into IRC, it masks it with asterisks. This other user's like, no way, that's cool. The next thing that comes across the screen is hunter2. And so he essentially disclosed his password to everybody in the IRC channel. Now, there's more to the story, so if you haven't read about it or heard about it, I would definitely suggest going out to Google and just putting in hunter2. It'll be the first thing that comes up. What else made this entertaining is how many times I saw hunter2 come up in the parameter tampering exercises, and the SQL injection. I was seeing hunter2 all over the place, which is awesome. That means people are hitting all different parts of the site, really enumerating it, and then trying to use that information. hunter2 did absolutely nothing, so I think that probably aggravated some people. But it was funny to see that, come through. And in the lower right-hand corner, we just talk about, it's in index.php, and it says you may be onto something, which is nothing. And I don't think anybody wasted a lot of time on that, but we just threw that out there. So how do we measure success? So we did that with surveys. We did 2 surveys. We did a paper survey at the end of day 2, which asked questions such as, what did you like about the event? Or suggestions for improving the event. And then roughly 30 days later, we followed that up with another survey. And it said something to the effect of, in what ways have you applied your understanding of security issues and best practices since the event? And so based on those responses, that's how we were able to see, just how successful or a failure this event could have been. So let's go and talk about the capture the flag exercise. So we had, again, 30 seats available. We'd had 6 teams of 5. We made sure we had gender diversity, that we had cross-pollination of technical capabilities. That was very important. We had a segregated network with no internet access. We did, however, a few days before the event, reach out to all participants and tell them to bring their own device so they could do some research on some of these vulnerabilities that they would find. And then we had the game server that was provided by Parameter Security. We used one switch, a 48-port switch, and then we ended up with 34 laptops. In the morning was the lecture. Now, it was kind of cool. So, as they were going through lecture, they would go through maybe 30 or 45 minutes of talking, followed by a little bit of time going through some of the tools, kind of preparing them for the CTF in the afternoon. Here's a picture of the event. So, there's Mr. Conister on the left. So, basically giving some instruction on some hacking techniques, tools and their use cases. All these laptops, again, were provided by our asset management team. Luckily, they gave us 34. So we had 4 spares, and in the first hour of day 1, 3 of those 4 spares were exhausted, just from weird random issues. And luckily, we were able to get a few back up, and then we didn't have any issues after that. So no one really ever had any downtime. But if you do something like this, I would definitely, obviously have some spares. Now, the image on these laptops was provided by Parameter because it went along with their hands-on hacking class, but it's a custom Kali image that has VirtualBox with a couple VMs. And so that way, when they're going through these exercises, they can target those local VMs before they go out and do the actual CTF. And then again, we were against using the bring your own device and then doing the USB just because of some weird issues we've seen in the past. So a little more information on the event. So we wanted to have technical people on staff in case any teams ran into any difficulty. We called this staff the Titans to go along with the Clash of the Titans. Again, everything was built around this theme. And the Titans were the penetration testing team as well as some other people from the security organization. Music. So that was provided by one of our pen testers, Mr. Naker. You ask a pen tester to provide music to a CTF, and there's one thing you can bank on happening, and that is rickrolling the entire room. And that's what he did. He did it with a Nirvana Rick Astley mashup. It took a couple minutes for people to understand, to realize what they were listening to, but it was pretty cool. And then food and beverages. We made sure we had coffee every morning, and then we had lunch catered in. Now here's a different picture of our room. So on the left-hand side are a bunch of tables where we had the food and the coffee and stuff set up. That's also where spectators could come in and watch the event. We had our big switch in our game server in the far back right corner there. Now, this was a newly remodeled building, and with that being said, there'd be an abundance of power everywhere. You know, every floor of this building just had outlets everywhere, except for the one room that we had to host the event in. There's 5 outlets in here, and we couldn't change our location because, you know, there were some other rooms that size, but again, we're celebrating the opening of a new campus, so we wanted people to be coming in and checking this out. So we were stuck with this. Luckily, we had facilities come out and provide power towers, which are different from extension cords and surge protectors. Not sure how, but according to the fire marshal, they are. But we were able to run each of these to a table, and it provided enough power for all the laptops as well as a couple BYOD devices. Now, we went with a big switch over wireless to have better control of the network, but that also meant we had to power the switch. And we went with the one big one instead of smaller ones due to lack of power. But that created a problem. We had to run a lot of network cabling. So we did that. We ran all the network cabling. We put a lot of gaffer's tape down. Nobody tripped and fell on their face. So I think we did a good job there. That's our DJ there in the lower right-hand corner. But overall, the room worked great. We had some traffic coming through there and people checking it out. And overall, I mean, can't really complain. So here's a picture of the scoreboard. So I want to take this opportunity to talk about one of the highlights of the CTF. So we had a user really think outside the box here. And we'll call her Danae. So how the CTF works is, you get together and you create a team, and that team goes through and they hack multiple systems. And as they hack these systems, they accumulate money. Now with that money, they can they can bribe the cyber police, they can buy hints for other flags, all kinds of different things they could do. Well, what Danae did is, they got so far into the challenge that she stepped away from her main team, went over here and spun up this other little team, went through the exact same challenges that she already knew how to do, building money in that team. She did that for multiple smaller teams. Then went back to her original team and hacked all of them and pulled all that money in. So real quick, you know, she was able to just, they had this huge amount of money really quick. And it was genius, you know. And you're like, wow, this is a good example of someone really thinking outside the box. And so, you know, kudos there. And just take note of how close the scores were. That's due to HR, and I'll talk on that here in a minute. Maybe, I don't know. So, but that would be interesting, though, wouldn't it? Here's our CIO. He came out. I was briefing him on kind of the setup, you know, how everything was going. What really made this cool, you know, so the CIO of Enterprise, right? He's in charge of thousands of people. I'm sure he had all kinds of stuff going on that day, but he came here, and not only did he come by and check this out, he stayed for the closing remarks. He stayed while we pulled up all that gaffer's tape and then put all the laptops up. And not only that, he went with us to our happy hour and sponsored our happy hour. So that was a really cool thing to be a part of. So a little more on the event. All the participants got a t-shirt like what I'm wearing here, as well as a sticker that they could put on their laptops or wherever. The winning team got an external battery pack like the one pictured here that's got our Release the Kraken logo on it. And then we wrapped up with the closing remarks from our leadership team. So some of the stuff that we did at the end of the event, so again, we did the survey right at the end of day 2. We also posted a walk through the web challenge. So the web challenge stayed up for about a month and a half after the end of the event. I would go in and check the access log every day, couple days, and people were hitting it. Well, with this walkthrough, we included a picture of the pie, and we put in there all the specs of it. And then we walked them through the regular web challenge as well as the more difficult challenge, and then we included all the Easter eggs in there. When that was posted, a lot of the traffic picked back up, which was good. That means that maybe some people were stuck or they wanted to go and see other parts of the challenge, but they got back in there and they started doing some stuff, and so that was pretty cool. So multiple participants at the completion of the event were asked by their managers to go and present at their department meetings. So some of those participants reached out to us and asked us for some help, as far as, does this make sense on what I'm presenting, or trying to get slides from Mr. Chronister's hands-on hacking class. So it was great to be able to work with them on getting that stuff together. And then again, great exposure for us. The security organization was invited to attend multiple department meetings. And so we were able to go out there and reiterate, kind of reinforce all the different services that we have to offer. Most of the organization knows already, but when you're constantly telling them, hey, we got pen testers on staff, you don't have to go outsource it, or, they kind of see how we work. Again, that was a way for us just to get out there in front of them and let them know what we offer. So let's talk about the response. So 29 of the 30 surveys that were handed out at the end of day 2 were returned. Now, one of the questions was, overall, I would rate this event. We had 25 people give it a 5, and then 4 gave it a 4. Now, it's important to note that 5 is excellent, 1 is poor, and then 4 is good. What's cool about this is the people that gave it a 4, it was due because the event wasn't long enough. And we really saw that halfway through day 2 when people really started catching on to what they were doing. They were getting excited about it. They learned, they knew how the CTF was going, and they were learning more of the tools and the techniques. And so that was the issue, was people just wanted more time for this. And that being said, too, we're in the process, it's successful enough where now we're already planning release the Kraken 2.0, and we're taking it more globally. So we're going to do stuff overseas as well as here. But here's another one of the questions, what you liked about the event. And then here's some of the responses. Now, what was really cool about the CTF is the kind of collaboration. You have all these teams that were brought together by HR. HR assigned these teams based on skill level and by department. So they wanted to make sure that the teams were as even as possible. And if you remember the scoreboard, they did a really good job at that. And so with the way the CTF was designed, there were some easier challenges, there were more difficult challenges, but everybody was able to participate. Everybody came together, worked as a team from all different parts of IT to accomplish these different tasks. And another really cool thing I saw too was, so lecture on day 2 started at 9 o'clock. I got there at 7:15 just to make sure that the laptops will come back up. I didn't sleep well that night because I'm thinking, man, we got like 2 spares. And so I get there at 7:15. There were 4 participants already there, and they were working through challenges from the day before, which was fantastic, So that means that we definitely picked the people that had the desire and the aptitude and the motivation to want to do this. So that was a really cool thing to see. So let's go over some of the numbers. So it took 18 people from 5 different departments at EHI to come pull this event together. Now, if you plan on doing something like this, definitely have a project manager. I think that was one of the most important things we did, is made sure that we had a project manager who really did a great job keeping us, on task. And, without her, this never would have happened either. But we had HR who helped to make sure that the participants that were selected were going to be able to get the time off, from their teams. We had asset management. Again, they were the ones that provided all the laptops. Facilities helped us with the power towers in the room. We also had members of the security organization who basically came together to do the entire event. We had networking who kind of came and got us a switch and stuff. As far as the web challenge, so again, one of our initial concerns was, what if we don't get 30 people to go through this? Well, we ended up with 122 people completing the challenge. And it ranged everywhere from an engineer 1 all the way up to a couple vice presidents. Those vice presidents, both of them, actually went through and completed the more difficult challenge, which is really freaking cool to see. But so out of those 122, 45 completed the more difficult challenge. Those people made up 42 different departments across the organization. So the exposure was enormous. And I think that we didn't log anything as far as pulling any kind of numbers after the challenge was posted on our intranet, but that number grew quite a bit, I'm sure. So again, awesome exposure. And then we're going to wrap it up with the immediate impact to organization. So increased requirements for database passwords. There were parts of the exercise or during the CTF event where you were actually going out and cracking passwords. And so that really opened up some people's eyes as to just how easy it is to go in and hack some of this stuff. And so they went back to their teams and they said, you know what, we need to increase our requirements. Being more observant. We did have somebody who, about a week after the event, reached out to their management because they saw some funky stuff going on in the logs. Maybe they've seen it in the past, or maybe they're just more observant. But the cool thing was, it was actually us doing a pen test. And they saw those logs, and so there they were being more observant. Increased hardening of the network. You know, there were multiple exercises in the CTF that covered, attacking networks. And so, that was a good one there. Application hygiene considered with interdependencies and early in the SDLC lifecycle. Basically, more frequent story grooming sessions, more talk on dependencies. There was a part of the one of the lecture portions where Mr. Conister talked about the risk of not keeping your dependencies updated. This guy took it back to his team, and now they've implemented that in their daily and weekly processes, and now they have more story grooming sessions. And then the last one, so security as an enabler of innovation. So when a proactive attitude is taken towards IT security, it can ensure your business is agile and becoming more innovative. And so, these are things that we saw immediately, within the first couple days out to maybe a week and a half. And so, again, if you're looking at trying to sell something like this to your management or to your organization, these are some really important things that we saw that really stood out. With that being said, don't be this guy. What questions do you guys have? Yes? There wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot because, again, I think one of the key things is we had top-down support. It was our vice president who kind of threw out the idea. Now, there was multiple communications from him out to other parts of the organization, much higher than us. But one of the only concerns, I only heard it from one individual that was in a management role, was he was a little concerned that maybe somebody was spending a little too much time on the challenge. So we're working on newer challenges that are going to have some hints. And what we're going to do this time around is the hints will be hyperlinks. So we'll be able to track that. So if somebody takes 5 or 6 hints to get through to that challenge, but someone took 2, we'll weigh that and then maybe take that into consideration when we're choosing who that the participants will be. So, next question. Yes. Danae. And her awesome thinking outside the box. No, I was really surprised at how much it took off. It started out as just hey, let's just do the CTF and see where this goes. And, shortly afterwards, there was talk of, hey, we're going to do another one. And, hey, go submit a talk to ShowMeCon and go talk to them about it. And so, it's getting bigger. We've thought of a lot of cool ideas for the 2.0 that we're looking at doing. But yeah, But I think the thinking outside the box is really cool. Yeah. I was waiting for that. So the hard cost was $35,000. I got that from the project manager. That's really all she told me. It really wasn't that bad. So again, now if you're standing up your own game server and then having to go through and put some lecture materials together, it's not hard to make something like this successful and really get the whole organization excited about it. So you put forth that extra effort in the first year. Obviously, all subsequent years would be easier. But there wasn't a lot of time spent on the challenge. We wanted to make sure that it'd be a learning event, and we used it on a Raspberry Pi, so we didn't have to any crazy requirements there. Yeah, it was $35,000. Next question.
How many people passed the initial test?
Are you talking about like through the web challenge? We had 122 people complete the web challenge. When they did that, we added them to a spreadsheet, which was then turned over to HR. And it was up to HR to figure out who's actually getting picked and who's not. Again, there was 30 seats. I don't know how they did that. I know that they took into effect the department as well as their skill level. So they were really big on the gender diversity. They were real big on making sure that, there was the cross-pollination of technical capabilities across each team. But yeah, 122 people hit it. And again, after we posted the walkthrough, the number definitely climbed. We didn't pull any figures at that point, so. Next question? No more questions? All right, again, here's my contact information. Feel free to stop me after this or in the halls. I'll be here rest of today and then all day tomorrow. You can reach out to me on email or Twitter. And thanks again for coming to my talk. I appreciate it.